breath is a first principle of health. Everything starts and ends with the breath. Your first inhale in this life is an inhale, your last is an exhale, and life is just one long breathing exercise. I was always coming from a performance perspective, at least until I got injured, and then I switched to more of a healing perspective. But I realized that healing is performance, and guys like you don't need to learn how to work harder. They need to learn how to recover better, and recovery is just healing. So train really hard when you're supposed to train really hard, recover really hard when you're supposed to recover really hard. That is peak performance.
You were the person that taught me, hey, you can blend together this high performance mentality with breath work. And actually, if you want to be a high performer, this is such an integral part of that experience.
99% of our thoughts are nonsense, and that thought is going to create more tension or more pain if you're healing. And in order to break that, we need to get out of the mind and into the body, into the heart, and feel the feelings and allow for them to be there and accept them to the point where then they will release.
All right, brother. Nick Sweeney, thanks for joining me, man.
Thank you for having me.
This podcast is a long time coming. I think we are both extremely excited for this. But before we dig into the juicy bits of the conversation, we talked about you actually opening us up with a little Vortex Breathwork, which is your kind of like this special proprietary blend of breathwork. I did it for the first time this morning and had a really cool experience, but I didn't have the man himself with me. So why don't we kick it off with some of that?
Yeah, let's do it. So if anyone's listening, don't do it if you're driving, if you're in a dangerous place. But if you are in a safe place, then let's rip a vortex and drop in and get focused.
Let's do it, brother.
Just close your eyes, feel your feet only. Start to take some deep breaths in, 6 out. In, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 3 more. In, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Last one in. All the way out. Prepare for 13 seconds in and go, following the sound. In, 2. 11, 12, 13, 13 out. Nice and slow, using your abdomens as the gas and brake pedal. All the way out. 3, 2, 1. In for 8 seconds. Out for 8 seconds. In for 5 seconds. 2, 3, 4, 5. Out for 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. In for 3. 2, 3. Out for 3. 2, 3. In for 2. Out for 2. In for 1. Out for 1. Hold your breath. Release all the tension in your body. Feel your brain. Feel your heart. Feel gravity. And you can breathe normally.
Brother.
There we go.
Man, what a way to kick off the episode.
Yeah.
Anyone that knows me well knows that you're the only guy that could convince me to do breath work live on the podcast before.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was saying to you before, obviously I wanted to, I didn't get to use the Coherence app, which I'm very excited to use and discuss with you, but I did the Vortex Breathwork that you have listed on that Instagram video, and we'll link to it in the show notes too. And it just made me thinking, I think, dude, it's probably been at least over a year since I've done intentional breath work. And I've definitely like stopped myself in the middle of working or doing something and taking 1 to 2 to 3 intentional breaths. But even while I'm sitting here with you, I can feel those feelings that you're talking about, just that, just that sense of just tuned in awareness. And I mean, how long did we breathe for? Was that 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes?
Yeah, the vortex breath is like 1 minute and 8 seconds.
Yes.
I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's so fascinating to me about that is these things that, and we all have these things, right? Let's take breath work for me, for example. 1 minute and 8 seconds to just radically shift your day and ultimately prime the pump for the version of yourself of how you want to show up in the world. Yet it's so interesting. Just, I don't know, it's all really just an excuse, and we have time to do those things. But I think it's fascinating, even guys like us that are, really well researched into this esoteric space, how easy it is just to put off those things that we should be doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the voice in my head and the voice in many people's heads, I think it goes like, I know what I should be doing, but I'm not doing it. Why am I not doing it? And that's the thing is, usually that you should be doing something in your life, or you more often should not be doing something in your life, but you keep doing it.
Yes.
And I think that the world that you and I both operate in is, how can you help someone go from, I know I should be doing this, but I don't know why I'm not doing it, to I'm doing it and I know why I'm doing it. And that 0 to 1 kind of shift, there's a lot, and it's a journey. And so there's no one silver bullet answer. It's more 1,000 silver bullets that you kind of accumulate over time to get yourself to the point where you just do the thing you said you were going to do, when you said you were going to do it, in the way you said you were going to do it.
Yes. And
that's what I'm all about. And I believe that breathwork is a vehicle to doing that and to rewiring the brain. And it's also working on a identity level. So you don't identify right now as someone who does breathwork yet, but if you were to do breathwork every day for a month, that would change something with your identity. All change happens from the identity level outwards. So if I identify as the person that does breathwork every day, then it's easier for me to do breathwork. It's part of my identity. From identity, the next layer out is thoughts. The next layer out is emotions. The next layer out is action. So your subconscious brain is not going to operate or listen to the monkey brain. It knows that there's a bunch of nonsense going on with the monkey brain all day long. So it's not going to take it seriously. What the subconscious does respond to is the language of action. So if you shift your identity, you shift your actions, you shift your identity again, it becomes a positive feedback loop. And you wake up at 5 a.m. every day for enough days, you become the 5 a.m. guy.
Yes.
For example. So there's a lot that goes into it.
That's beautifully said. And I think to respond to what you're saying, I think why I haven't done it, my personal perspective is, with my healing journey with autoimmune issues and then getting into the esoteric space on Twitter, I almost felt like by the time we had like really gotten in the weeds with Meat Mafia and Noble, I'd almost felt like I had hit a point where I felt like I was almost over-indexing in the esoteric, the biohacking, being overly methodical and almost religious about the foods that I was consuming, the way that I was sleeping, the way that I was training, supplementation, to the point where I almost felt that I was a slave to those pursuits. And so I started seeing examples of almost these like conqueror capitalists that had built these businesses or were building these businesses that weren't doing any of those things. And so I think I subconsciously associated, a breathwork protocol, for example, I associated that with almost being like, it was almost like it was mutually exclusive from this like conqueror archetype. And I don't think that that's right. I think I'm just explaining my thought process and how easy it is for us to get into these judgments that pull you away from something that you should be doing. But it's super interesting. And that was partially what gravitated me to you, because when we first met, just for the listener, we met at I think it was Harry's Run Club on a Tuesday morning. And I didn't put 2 and 2 together because I had been following you. You were anonymous at the time as Base Bra on Twitter. And the more that I was scrolling through your content, the things that you were talking about, retention, all these topics that you were speaking about at that time, I guess the best way I would describe it, and I'm a big bookmarker on X. I bookmark everything, and it's typically things that give me my ideal mindset that I want to have. And so I just have like an endless backlog. Like if I need any mental juice or whatever, if I'm not feeling it, I can just scroll the bookmarks on X. And I felt like, not even having met you yet, just scrolling through your content, I was like, it almost felt like it was a lightning bolt of motivation and vim based on the way that you were writing. And my fear on X has always been, when I meet anonymous people, I am typically let down by the body of work of the man versus the anonymous persona. So it's almost that old adage of don't meet your heroes. And then I obviously met you at that run club and just like loved your energy. And I was like, all right, here's an anonymous guy that's like even more dialed in person than his written content. And then what was so funny is I had a big business decision to make with Noble that resulted in conflict. And I won't get into the specific details, but there was something in my intuition. Even though I'd only met you one time, I was like, I think Nick is the person that I need to reach out to. And we had an amazing conversation, and we've built the relationship and the brotherhood from there. But my whole point in saying this story is that you were the person that taught me, hey, you can blend together this high performance mentality with breath work. And actually, if you want to be a high performer, this is such an integral part of that experience. And so I think you were a guy that had a body of work where I'm like, no, dude, I think I need to like dig into this a little bit more. So that was a whole diatribe, but I always love the listener to have context into how we meet our guests and the relationships behind the scenes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And it was mutually felt when I first met you. I was like, oh yeah, I know this guy. Mm-hmm. Like I don't know this guy, but I know this guy. And that's such a beautiful thing when you meet someone and you see everything all at once. Yeah. And it's definitely something that I believe is rare. Mm-hmm. To see someone and be immediately resonating with.
Yes.
And that is, we come from the school of like grind and fear and high performance and whatever. And you can get siloed into a way of thinking in that. And so when we don't operate from actual legitimate first principles, we can kind of fall astray from what is really going to help us. And breath is a first principle of health. Everything starts and ends with the breath. Your first inhale in this life is an inhale. Your last is an exhale. And life is just one long breathing exercise. So to me, I was always coming from a performance perspective, at least until I got injured. And then I switched to more of a healing perspective. But I realized that healing is performance, and guys like you don't need to learn how to work harder. Mm-hmm. They need to learn how to recover better. Mm-hmm. And recovery is just healing. And so train really hard when you're supposed to train really hard, recover really hard when you're supposed to recover really hard. That is peak performance. Limited time, limited energy, putting those two together in the most efficient, potent way possible. That's what I'm all about. I can't stop thinking about it. And that's just how I was grown. That was beaten into me through athletics. And then going into the marketplace and business, I'm like, okay, well, I've got this. I can breathe my way through the entire day and I know I'm being more productive than most people. And I've shifted out of the us versus them mentality, which is where I think peak performers kind of can fall into, but then they're falling into the frame of the matrix of their own making and allowing for the results sheet or the balance sheet to dictate their self-worth and how they feel. And when you can recognize that breathwork is not some woo-woo thing, although it gets co-opted by people like that, and that can turn people off, and it turned me off. So when I started doing breathwork and writing, I was like, I know I can fuse the faith and the fear.
Yes.
I can fuse the high performance and the spiritual together because we live in the third dimensional reality and polarity is a law here.
Yes.
So let me release from fear-based mindset that I had grown up in and raced in and trained in, and let me start to swing to the other side to faith and really hone in on faith. Because if I just keep living in fear, Fear is a very hectic energy, and you can open the jar in the morning and sniff fear, and you will get to the gym. But you don't close if you can't close the jar on fear, it will run your shit.
Definitely.
So that's where I come from, is how can I fuse these impulses of the spirit, fear, faith? That's going to equal truth.
You essentially just articulated the feeling that I had that just made me want to build a friendship with you and learn more about you, and ultimately want to, and like I said, right, it would be disingenuous to say that I'd done breath work before this, but I'm like, even me doing it this morning, doing it now, I'm pretty bullish on the future of it. But you were the person that made me realize, like you've essentially cleared this fog of me almost putting breath work into the category of like woo-woo people that have done 20 ayahuasca ceremonies. That's that you've cleared that fog for me. But you touched on your healing journey, dude. You have a fascinating backstory, and I want the audience to hear it. High level collegiate skier, University of Denver. What do they won? 24 national championships. So they have to be the best skiing program of all time, right? The Alabama football of skiing, essentially. And dude, you couldn't walk for 10 months. Then you ended up being able to heal yourself and go back on the team and be captain of the team your senior year. I would love to hear that story.
Yeah, I mean, you just told the high level of it, but no, it's great.
I just stole your thunder.
It's perfect.
I was too juiced. Well, maybe you could even, for the listener, maybe just like, what was your mindset, and like, who were you as a man, as a collegiate skier? Just like, you were sending me some of the videos, and I'm like, dude, I haven't seen, like, I was imagining the sheer agony that you were in watching you in that ski competition. And so like, I'm just curious, like, what was your mindset like at that time?
Whew. I mean, it was a hectic mindset, because in one way I'm really competitive and disciplined, but it all is coming from an energy of not good enough. And it was coming from an energy that I didn't have control over. So sometimes I would be able to channel that energy into a race result that was great, crush that race. Sometimes the fear would run my crap in the race, and I would end up not executing on a pacing strategy or choosing the wrong skis before or whatever. But who I was back then was someone that just was stuck in my own program of, I need to be great. And I know that I have what it takes to be great, but I want it now. And so I would be constantly driving, but it ended up being self-sabotage, because I did the athletic thing in college, but junior year I started a company because I was starting to self-sabotage myself. So a lot of what I talk about with my athletes now is like, act as if you already are an Olympic X. Act as if you already are, or you are so close to being that. Because I had, in my younger years, seen the potential. I'm like, I could go to the Olympics. I could do this. And over time, I started to see that gap widen, but I was also seeing that widen as I was cutting corners in my life and not being a professional. And so there was certain things that I would do that would end up running in the background that would cause me to believe my identity is not an Olympic skier. My identity is close to, but actually kind of farther away than I wanted, to the point where I was like, maybe I can't do this. And fear overran me. And when you don't think you can do it, when that gap starts to widen, your conviction goes down. And when your conviction goes down, you're more apt to self-sabotage or fall into vices or something like that. Just self-destructive behavior at the same time, working really hard in skiing. And my self-destructive behavior looked like, I'm going to go start a business. Because if this sport isn't going to validate my internal suffering, and I'm going to just go do it in business then.
Definitely.
And I'm going to do both at the same time, and I'm going to just conquer all the lands. And what ended up happening is I didn't sleep very much. And when you're training a bunch physically, that doesn't equate to good performances in the winter, which only widened the gap from what I really believed. Could I really go to the Olympics? Could I really go to the U.S. ski team? That gap kept getting wider. And I just started to move towards like, I'm going to do business instead. And I see that now in retrospect, like Steve Jobs, he's like, you can connect the dots looking backwards. Connecting the dots looking backwards, I was like, oh, that was not necessarily my truth. That was the energy of that first business came from a place that I wasn't aware of fully. And then I started 2 more businesses in college. And I'm like, what are you doing? Looking backwards.
Because let's keep loading up more on our plate, right?
Let's just keep doing it, and let's just burn the candle at both ends and prove people wrong.
Yes.
Seeking mindset, scheming mindset I was in.
Yeah. Really quick, were you partier in college too? Like, were you a big drinker and stuff like that?
No, I mean, cross-country skiers have about a month off in April a year. And so in April, I was the drunkest one on campus. But, and maybe a little in May too. But otherwise, like straight edge throughout the summer. Skiers are made in the summer. You're putting up base miles in the summer, and then into the winter and whatever. We would drink like maybe Halloween, some other parties, but for the most part, I was pretty dialed. If you drank, our coaches, like we had it in our minds that you have one beer and that can ruin an entire week of training. Maybe a little extreme, but that was just the echo chamber I was in, is everyone's doing that. So if I'm to have one beer, well, then that's going to create a seed of doubt in my mind of, am I really who I say I am? And that creates some other problems down the line. So I started to just consolidate, okay, after May, after June, I'm done with everything and we're a professional. So yeah.
Interesting. So I'm imagining when you were entering your freshman year at University of Denver, probably had an incredible resume, up through your point in high school. I would have to think that entering your freshman year, there was probably like not a doubt in your mind that you had the potential to ski in the Olympics. And the reason why I'm saying that is I relate to that too, because in high school I had, close to 20 Division I scholarships to play baseball, but I converted from an outfielder to a pitcher because I had a really good arm. So the first year that I was learning how to pitch was at Seton Hall. So I'm learning how to pitch at the Division I level. And that was the first time in my life that I ever had fear around a sport, where I never approached the game like I was failing. I was always super aggressive, where I'm like, if I'm up at bat, I want to hit a line drive off the guy's head. You know what I mean? Like I never had fear with baseball before. And it's a fascinating thing to look back at yourself, like we're doing now with your skiing career, just in retrospect of like you just always had the potential. There was really no difference in your potential. But that's probably what makes you such a good coach, is being able to realize, like, no, when I was entering in my freshman year, I had no doubt that I was going to be able to do this thing. And then you kind of change the environment, and then all of a sudden your mental process just completely changes.
And I think the catalyst too was like I got injured, and then that injury throws me off because I mean, I had broken my collarbone and gotten concussed my gap year going into my gap year before freshman year at University of Denver. So I'm coming into University of Denver. I'm like, all right, last year was a wash. We got a couple good results that got me on this team. So the potential is 100% there. Anything's possible now that I'm not injured.
Yeah.
Freshman year was really powerful. We won NCAAs. I was like, let's go. Sophomore year, even better shape. I trained like a madman, went to Norway for the whole summer, came back, just sick shape, and was crushing it, and had a really, really powerful season. And then at the end of the year, I was trying to go to U23 national championships, which is anyone who's under 23 years old, the best of the best, basically Olympics for under 23. And I missed it by 2 points because in that race I ended up crashing. And that was an ugly one. I was in the woods after, just like losing my mind, like screaming and hitting fucking trees, and it was ugly. But that night I was on my ass in the shower with the water running down my face. I was like, I will not let this define me, and I will not let this day make me not believe in myself or work less hard was the verbiage I used. I will not let this make me work less hard.
Wow.
And then that was the last couple races of that season. That spring, I collapsed my arch, slamming my foot down, and I couldn't really walk for 6 months. So I'm like running around with a collapsed arch. The PTs thought that it was plantar fasciitis, which is like you should rest. But I actually had a collapsed arch, and so actually you should have been strengthening it the whole time. So in the fall, I realized this. I started strengthening it, but I had missed a summer of training. Have a pretty okay year. I'd been injured all summer, which is where the majority of hours would get loaded in. So I understood. I was like, okay, not as good of shape, whatever. Let's run the Jets into this next year, 2020. University of Denver was leading the NCAA championships when COVID kiboshed those NCAA championships. No one won that year. So everyone came back from that, and that was a fun party at least. But couple months, COVID's happening, world's like, everyone's going crazy. I'm going crazy in my house, so I start making mountain bike trails in my yard, manual labor. I was loving it, off-season training. And then that's when the actual like gnarliest injury happens, where I split my shin open mountain biking, torque my foot, get a bundle of scar tissue under my foot, and now I can't walk on the same foot for 10 months after that.
Same foot as the collapsed arch.
Mm-hmm. So my right leg's still smaller than my left to this day.
So you were doing, did you do cross skiing and then cross country skiing, and then also the type of skiing where you're going super fast down as well?
I did that recreationally,
right, okay.
Backcountry and stuff, but I never competed.
You were competing cross country.
Mm-hmm.
So you go from being in, the 1% of the 1% physically, all you've ever done is use your legs. I mean, I can't even imagine the things that you dealt with mentally, just being like, I can't even imagine being immobile for almost a year.
Well, I wasn't immobile because I could use my upper body.
Yeah.
And cross-country skiing is like 60% upper body, 40% lower body. And so I was doing 4-hour volume sessions, zone 2 in the pool. I was doing the ski erg. I was doing lots of pull-ups and stuff in a state of denial until end of July. And I'm like, okay, now I legitimately am not going to have the season I wanted. Like, this is too many hours I'm missing. You're supposed to be training 80 to 100 hours a month. I was grinding out 80, but I was in the pool, and it's not the same as like actually doing the right type of training. So that's when I started to realize like, oof, what's going on? Why can't I heal? I injured it end of May, end of July. I'm like, okay, what's going on? And also super depressed by that point. I'm like, oh, this is a repeat of last year.
Yeah.
And this is not how I wanted my college career to go. It's like injuries and doubt. And I was like, but at the same time, our coach got furloughed, assistant coach got furloughed, our head coach went back to Finland because he couldn't be with his family if he didn't. So we had no coach, assistant furloughed, COVID's happening. I'm like, maybe the season doesn't even happen.
Yeah.
Maybe this is all a gift. And I was running my second business on the side to distract myself. And then in the fall, it became clear. It's like, okay, there's races are going to happen. I'm not racing. I'm going to have to redshirt this year. And I was like, came to that conclusion around the same time I broke up with my girlfriend, around the same time I shut down that business, and around the same time that the doctor was like, your career's over. We don't think that you're going to be able to walk in at least a year without pain, if ever. And that was, that for a couple of weeks. Didn't know what to do with myself. Pulled my rib out doing pull-ups. And that sort of paralysis within my body led me to breath, because that was the only thing I could do. So I'm laying in bed there doing nothing.
Interesting.
On my lonesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because like you probably would have been in the pool or doing some of the other upper body training, but because you tweaked your rib, it was literally like, hey, there's nothing I can do. The only thing that I can do to get some type of like physical exertion or feel something, some type of stimulus physically, is breath work. So it was almost like it was your last resort at that point.
Yeah. It was the only thing that made me feel emotionally like it was a period of relief. If I do 30 minutes of breath work, it's like I get 30 minutes of relief. And then I started going down that rabbit hole a little bit more. I'd used breath work for performance before, but now it's like, these are some interesting healing stories of people. And it was a pretty instantaneous click of like, I don't care if this takes me 10 years, I will breathe myself back to being able to walk and do what I love again. I don't care if it takes 10 years, I'm going to do this every single day. And within 2 weeks, I was like, oh, I can do this. Oh, I can do this. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I can do this. 3 weeks in, I focused on my right foot only for about 30 minutes, and my right foot was hotter than my left. At the end of that session, I was like, oh, I'm consciously directing energy in my body through my attention. And that was just what I clinged on to. That was the river and the rock in the river. I'm like, just do this every day and see what happens. And I had some other aha moments along the way, but 3 months later I was able to walk again without pain, which I was like, well, fuck the doctor. Doctor told me a year.
Yeah.
At least. 3 months. Let's go.
Let's go.
Who knows? Anything's possible now. And that mindset shift was the inflection point of the first 23 years of my life living in fear to now living in faith. Faith in my body, faith in God, faith in this universe conspiring in my favor, faith in my ability, my free will. And 6 months later, I was able to run without pain. And that was May 1st, literally on the dot of the training season start, May 1st.
Wow.
And so then I started training like a madman that year. And it was really beautiful. It was amazing. I got to train really hard, get in really good shape. And then a month before U.S. Nationals Olympic trials for cross-country skiing, I concussed myself doing breath work, passed out on a bench, smacked my head on the metal bench, was concussed, realized that hyperventilation was not going to heal me. I was dealing with autonomic dysregulation, which is just like your motherboard's fried, basically. So that's when I learned parasympathetic, the power of parasympathetic, rest and digest, actual, like, that's where the healing happens. You can load up the gas tank with a bunch of resources, but you gotta light the fuse, kind of. And that's parasympathetic.
Okay.
And that was the 2 phases of what's now my Vortex sequence. And I got to race Olympic trials, captain the team, whatever. And then the third major injury was breaking my arm and wrist. Doctor saying it would be 12 weeks in surgery. It was 5 weeks before my bones were healed. And that was the last phase of the Vortex method now. That's what I have everyone do that wants to learn how to heal.
That's incredible, man. There's so much to unpack there. So you went from the doctors basically being like, it's going to be over a year just for you to be able to walk, to you being able to walk within 3 months, to you being able to end up going back to compete as captain of the team. And that was was that your final season?
That was the final season.
Yeah. It's a pretty incredible way to go out.
Yeah. It was a victory lap and a gift. I knew that if you miss 2 years, your shape is not going to be, I knew my level wasn't going to be good enough. But it was such a gift to just be able to do what I loved to do again. And the first 3 years of my college career, part of me was like, fuck this.
Yes.
It's like, it's -4 degrees on race morning. All I do is train and eat and sleep. I have brain fog all the time. I didn't know nutrition as well as I did then, so I'm just eating 8,000 calories a day, struggling through school. I'm like, what am I doing? There's not a whole lot of money in this cross-country skiing game. I believe that I can be great, though. I believe I have a talent and a gift, but I was starting to also self-destruct because I was like, do I really want this? Do I want to be living in a hotel in Europe for 4 months every winter, training against and competing against these Norwegians?
Yes.
Who have the crazy budgets, the super fast skis, and just seemingly it's like this big mountain that I'm looking at. But after I got injured, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful I get to just be in the woods right now in the winter, even though it's 4 degrees.
Yes.
And that was such a gift, and that mentality switched me to just gratitude as well. It's like gratitude, and it was a victory lap for me.
Yes.
And that's all it had to be. That's all I wanted it to be. I got to live with the team and sort of be like the leader of the team. I ended up hiring the coach for the team because our assistant coach got furloughed, but we ended up rehiring him.
Oh, wow.
And as captain of the team, we were like in charge of the hiring process. So it was like this amazing coalescing of my best friends on the team, the coach, me, and just how do I want to leave this organization? What's the mark I want to leave? And I believe that they're still feeling it on the team. And so I take a lot of like pride in that I was able to show up as a new man on the team for my last year. And yeah, just so grateful for that.
Man, you build culture, right? And it's like just what an incredible way to go out and to be able to use the word just like gratefulness to explain the way that you felt being out there. And that's the beauty of what contrast does, right? Like when you're the lowest moments, when you're sitting in your bed being like, dude, like how long is it even gonna, I'm not even thinking about competing anymore. I just want to get back to be able to walk to you having that like conceptualization of belief, like this tiny little seed of, oh, maybe I can heal holistically. And then you start to go all in on that healing journey and you have that blind faith and to being able to run, to ski, to compete, to being captain and just like ending it with gratefulness. It's incredible, right? And like you said, I think you said this off camera, not at all the way that you thought the career was going to go, yet that was like truly God's plan for you. And he was truly molding you in the iron to be able to be the man that you are now. And that relatability that you have and those crippling injuries, that's why I would imagine clients want to actually work with you. Because you're like, I'm dealing with something really serious and I'm going to listen to someone like Nick because he's just authentically teaching me the things that he did when he was in the valley.
Yeah, I tell everyone that comes to me, I'm like, this is the greatest opportunity of your life. How can we make this the best thing that's ever happened to you? That's the mindset. Double your conviction, double your confidence in yourself right now at your lowest. And you might fall further. You might fall all the way down to the trap door opening up beneath you and there's only flames below you and there's no way, no chance, but you just got to go up. And I only speak from my lived experience, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, but I have just always led with my intuition, and I didn't even know what I was doing for the first 3 months breathing, but I breathed myself back to walking. I wasn't following the Wim Hof. I wasn't following any Joe Dispenza stuff. I was like relatively just following what felt good as I was breathing. And that is the gift I want to give people is like, look, I can give you these sequences. I can give you these protocols, but this is your journey. This is your breath. No one can take that away from you. It's your birthright. You, as a co-creator with free will, can decide right now to take a deeper breath in. Whoa. Pretty cool.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. I think you touch on such an important point, just the importance of truly falling in love with that process of healing when you're kind of coming out of that valley. I remember having, a somewhat different but similar experience to you, just being on all these drugs and medications when I was dealing with ulcerative colitis and just being blanket told by the doctors, like, this is, you hit you won a terrible genetic lottery. This is just something you're gonna have to deal with the rest of your life. You didn't do anything wrong. Meanwhile, when I'm looking back, I'm partying, I'm eating terrible, I'm stressed out, I'm not sleeping, disconnected from God, like all the things to develop an autoimmune disease I was doing. And I remember seeing a couple other people online that were writing about healing ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, autoimmune issues holistically through carnivore. And so what's interesting is you just had this natural intuition that that's what I need to be gravitating towards. I almost needed to be prompted a little bit where I was like, oh, well, if these two other people can get off the same drugs and meds, I can do it too. I don't really care what my doctor is telling me. But my point in saying that is I remember like 2019, after doing carnivore for like 2 months, just like loving the process of like curating these foods and having a healing journal and just making these like small incremental improvements every single day, just like loving that process and being so in the moment. And there were just shades of your story that were reminding me of that. I think that's a very important thing where, like, number one, the most important thing is just that seed of belief that you actually can heal before anything else. But the process and the way that you heal and the way that you approach that every day is so important. And I don't think it's touched on enough.
I love that. I love that story. And there's so many ways I could take that. One way that I'll take that is like a belief is a decision ultimately, and it can be decided for you, or you can decide it. You can make the decision. And so St. Peter walking to the basilica back in ancient Rome, people thought that if they touched his shadow, they would be healed. And they would touch his shadow and they would heal themselves.
Yes.
So where is God in that? Is it St. Peter's faith in God that gives him the authority to heal people? Is that what's healing people? Or is it the internal faith that they have once they touch the shadow that suddenly, and what's the difference? It's all God. So more people need to come out of the woodwork with their healing stories, because when you see it, you can believe it. You can be like, oh, whoa, that person healed with ulcerative colitis with carnivore? I can do that. And so that belief can become instilled, and you can switch from a negative feedback loop of nothing's working, medical bills are costing me forever, like all this money, I'm super overwhelmed, everyone's telling me to do everything under the sun, and I don't know what to do. I don't trust them, and now I don't trust myself. I don't have my intuition, I'm not connected anymore. That is the really, really tough place to be. But if you switch from that negative feedback loop into a positive feedback loop where you are creating and generating this sacred momentum, you suddenly align with the path of healing, and you just commit to that path. You're like, I believe in this, I'm going to heal myself. And for me, and for my message is that path can be the breath 100% for you, for anyone. It can heal you, and it absolutely has the potential to heal you. Not only is it you breathing and changing your chemistry, but it's like, how much charge can I put behind each breath of belief? How much charge do I really believe that I am healing myself with that breath? And as you do it more, you start to increase your charge. And as you stay on that positive feedback loop with more and more momentum, you start to really believe in it. And when you suddenly get to the point where, whoa, I can feel my right foot. Whoa, I'm less stressed out. That person cut me off in traffic. I'm not stressed out about that anymore. What's happening to me? And then 3 months later, I can fucking walk. Whoa, what else is possible? And maybe it's not breath. Maybe it's carnivore.
Yes.
You had a moment like that, I'm sure, with carnivore. You're like, I am feeling better.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like this this kind of just beautiful momentum, and it's like you're in obviously carnivore for me was huge, breath work for you is huge, and it's almost it was a massive lever to pull us in the right direction. That's kind of built momentum to all these other things, to the point where it's like, all right, the food really worked. Oh, and now I actually have intuition for the first time. I don't know. I've been in New York for the last 4 years. There's just something about the frequency of the city. I don't know. I think it's maybe disrupting my healing journey. I think there's a deeper level that I can get into. I really want to be on the beach. Okay, I'm going to go just move. I'm going to go. I'm going to, and it got out of a 3-year relationship, moved to San Diego, just like in the ocean every day, walking. I actually slowed it down a little bit. And it's not a coincidence that we started Meat Mafia that same year too. And so I know it's been very similar to you, where it's like breathwork was this incredible gateway, and then you just start adding all these like beautiful tools into your toolkit that lead to the version that you are now. And there's hundreds of more tools that I'm sure you're going to add, but it's very tough to go on social media, especially I think when you're looking to heal. Like, all the information I think is out there, but there's just so many competing inputs that people are like, well, if I don't have this exact type of food and this type of red light and this supplementation, and I'm doing this and I live in this city, there's no way I'm going to be able to heal. So they just decide to not start, which I completely understand. That's a downside to social media. And I think your message and what you and I are speaking about right now is like, just if you have that, dude, if you have that inception of belief or that intuition, that's literally like something that's been granted to you by the Lord, and just lean into that, because there are so many other examples of people besides you and me that have miraculous healing stories that have defied all odds.
Yeah, I mean, what's coming through to me is that when you went carnivore and you started healing, you got confidence, because now you're like, I have evidence, because the evidence is I'm feeling better right now. So that evidence we want to be looking for, of course, and that's going to create confidence, and confidence creates evidence. But when you don't have evidence, you have faith. Faith is without the evidence. The choice, the belief, the decision you make without the evidence.
Yes.
Without the confidence. And that is the hardest thing, I think, for people to do, is to switch into faith. But when you have faith, you are granted you are granted authority in the eyes of God to release his power of authority. And when you can instill that belief and faith in yourself, you can really change everything. And I think that the starting point and inception point for people, a gateway, a portal, is the breath. Because you just need to get one little thing moving in the right direction. If you're in a negative feedback loop where you're overwhelmed, you're confused, you're not healing, all these influencers online are telling you that it's not the sun that gives you cancer, it's the sunscreen that gives you cancer. It's like, well, you thought you were getting cancer either way. It's like fear toggling.
Definitely.
Let me start breathing and see how I feel. Let me start aligning with nature, or aligning with a diet that just resonates with me, and I not give my power away to the doctor, to the pill, to the protocol, to the prescription, because your nervous system thinks that the doctor is God, which is not true. You are born in the hospital, and the first person to really look at you, to examine you, is the doctor. And so that gets instilled in the nervous system. And when you go back and the doctor tells you, you have this, the nervous system instantaneously, it's not that we have this, it's I am this. I am cancer now. God just told me I am cancer. Boom, 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 boom. That gets wired, and that lives in the nervous system now. And the hardest work is releasing and getting that out of your nervous system, not identifying with that label. And, you're probably going to die in the hospital potentially. So this nervous system thing goes really deep, where you think that the doctor's God. The doctor is God. Yeah, and that's not true. Yes. That's you falling into the frame of these institutions and this material world reality, but God is no respecter of persons. And so pointing your eyes upwards and pointing your eyes into this sort of belief. And you asked me what my mindset was back in the day. It was like, I was ready to die at any moment. I was obsessed with death. I was like, the closer I live to death, the more authentic I will live. I'm ready, and let me live my life every day as if I'm going to tomorrow or today. That's switched now, where I have faith that, God willing, I can live to 250 years old and die in perfect health, and truly instill and program that program in. And it's just a change in your identity and your thinking, and your belief in what's possible with the help of God. It all points to God, really, what people believe in, and how they define meaning. So it goes deep. It goes deep, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I love what you said earlier in your point around doing the thing and the confidence that comes from doing the thing. Just taking my own experiences in some of our conversations offline, I don't know if there's a worse feeling for a man to have the knowledge of what you should be doing. And I think we instinctually all know the things that we should be doing. I actually think all of us have been blessed with an amazing gut instinct. The gut instinct is, I think almost all of us have a good gut instinct. The hard part is listening to the gut instinct. And so you hear these examples of guys that are, 300 pounds and, I don't know, maybe someone calls them like a fat piece of shit or whatever, or they watch a David Goggins clip or whatever, that thing just turns that switch on, and they just start going to the gym and they figure it out. And you see them 6 months later and they're 220 pounds. They look amazing. It's a different person like that. It's funny. What's funny is the 300-pound person knows what to do. Like they at least, you know, there's a lot of nuance out there, but they at least know like, hey, I should be going to the gym. I probably shouldn't be eating these processed foods. I probably should be drinking water instead of soda. But again, it's like, I don't think there's a worse feeling than having knowledge and then feeling this friction where you just can't apply it. It almost feels like you're in hell or no man's land. And I know we've both felt like that before too. It's like knowing that you shouldn't watch pornography, and then that's like your little secret. And then I remember like even, you know, practicing semen retention for the first time and being like, wow, dude, this was like the first week of time that I've never actively engaged in pornography before since I was like 15 years old, and as a grown man. And I'm like, oh, like how many days can I go? Can I never watch it again? Like and then again, like you fall in love with that journey and that process, because I'm like, oh, I'm building up confidence through the proof of work because I'm actually doing the thing and I'm not just thinking about it and carrying around this little shame box every single day.
Yeah, I could take that so many different ways, but yeah, I mean, on that note of just evidence in life, what most of us have, what all of us have, is a nervous system that wants to keep us safe and comfortable, not fulfilled. We all have that in our nervous system, and we have a survival bias in our nervous system. So the nervous system, it is wired to keep you safe and to see things as potential threats. And that can cascade into a really negative focal point of your life, where you are looking at all of the evidence. You have a lawsuit in your life going on right now. Every single person. One side of the lawsuit is focusing on all the evidence that you're not good enough, that fear that you're going to die, that you're not going to be able to heal, that you don't have enough money. That's one side of the lawsuit. And I know that we all live on that side of the lawsuit more than we want to live on that side. The work, I believe, is the work in instilling more faith, is shifting what I'm focused on to the winning side of the case, winning side of the lawsuit. Why can't I heal? Why can't I do whatever, you know, I believe I can do? Why am I so grateful today? What was the most beautiful part of my day? How is God showing up in my day right now? How did I honor myself right now? And one of the ways that I force people to reflect is 4 alarms on their phone every day for the first 2 weeks. Each alarm is labeled, what am I thinking about right now? Reticular activating system alarms. What am I thinking about right now? And you write it down in the notes, because these programs are very whisper, you know, subtly entering the gates of our subconscious, reinforcing programs that we don't want, such as I'm addicted to porn. Oh, I'm worthless. I'm not deserving. That whisper comes in and you don't catch it because you're not present. You're not aware. And then it reinforces the program. In order to delete the programs, you have to first become aware of the programs. What are those things living in my nervous system? Now that I have a greater level of awareness, I have a greater level of responsibility. So when you were 15, you were not aware of how bad porn is.
Everyone's telling me this is just what you do as a teenager.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so as you gain that level of awareness, it's like, oh, whoa, this is not it. This is not it. So now that I understand that that is a program, let me actively shift to the right side of the case and let me deal with these programs through the body. So when all your thoughts are due to unfelt feelings, so when you have tension in your body, that tension is going to create a thought. That thought's usually based on fear. 99% of our thoughts are nonsense, and that thought is going to create more tension or more pain if you're healing. And in order to break that, we need to get out of the mind and into the body, into the heart, and feel the feelings and allow for them to be there and accept them to the point where then they will release. And that's a huge part of healing. But I use the analogy of like tension creates a thought that comes up into your mind, and that thought is like tape and it sticks onto your consciousness. And if you can then have the tiger by the tail and you're like, whoa, I'm addicted to porn and I'm worthless and I'm unable to be disciplined and da-da-da-da-da. Or it's like, whoa, is that thought me? No. I have people do recognize, release, relax, resmile, return. Recognize. Oh, that's a lame thought. Release, like scissors cutting a kite above your head. Like the tape peeling off. Release. Relax. Resmile. So the nervous system suddenly is like, this guy's happy. This guy's safe. Face is a good indicator for your entire nervous system. Recognize, release, relax, resmile. Rebreathe, return to the heart or return to the feeling. Where in my body was that coming from? Maybe it's down here in my root where fear and insecurity and survival live.
Yes.
And maybe I haven't felt those feelings down there and seen them and talked to them and understood them. And I know we're going down a rabbit hole on that.
No, it's a great rabbit hole.
But you chip away at the tension day after day after day. It takes about 8 hours for your body to ingrain muscle memory. So if you're doing 5 good minutes a day of releasing from tension, 5 good minutes of recognize, release, relax, resmile, rebreathe, return, that's 150 minutes in a month. That's 2.5 hours. 3 months is 7.5 hours. So you could be in a completely different mind and body in 3 months, under 3 months.
Of 5 minutes worth a day.
Of only 5 minutes. And so only 5 minutes of meditating there. Not only are you changing your body in this 6R fashion, but you're changing what you're focused on. You're changing what the reticular activating system is focused on and the antenna. Because when you get a thought of you're worthless because you're addicted to porn, recognize, release, relax, resmile, return to my heart. Let me reverse that. Self-worth, nothing can contribute to or take away from my self-worth. And you instill that program and you reverse it. Reverse the program. Well, now I'm focusing on the right side of the lawsuit, the right side of the case. For people, the reticular activating system is focused on what to focus on. It's the filter of your reality. If you're walking around, if I told you, name everything in this room that's the color red, you look around your room, you find a bunch of red stuff, great. Name everything in this room that was color blue. You weren't focused on blue. We've given our reticular activating systems the job of focusing on keep us safe, keep us alive. And that manifests as email equals threat, text message equals threat. The language of your actions, watching porn equals threat. And we internalize that. So there's a lot here.
You're literally just dropping bombs, bro. I love it. I love it. Well, I think what I love is there's so much depth to what you're saying, but there's so much practicality. So like if someone is hearing this, I would say on a practical level, dude, I've never thought about that. Setting alarms throughout your day to be able to write down the thoughts that pop up into your mind.
For the first 2 weeks, at least, the next 2 weeks, write down the label, what was the best part of my morning? How did I honor myself this morning? Why am I so grateful today? What was the best part of my day? Yes. For example, 4 of them. And my reticular activating system is launched, the antenna is receiving, maybe when my alarm goes off tonight at 9:45 p.m., I'm going to say this moment right here with Brett was the best part of my day.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh man, this is such an amazing experience to be on this podcast with you. And I'm focused on the good side, the bright side of life.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Man, I am definitely going to start implementing that because as you're speaking, my immediate brain is thinking, all right, well, if I instituted that yesterday, what would those thoughts have been throughout the course of the day if I was setting these random alarms? And it's probably not a surprise to you, but I think, I've done a lot of work just thinking about my past. I think just building my relationship with Christ has made me just reflect my entire journey up and, becoming the man that I am now, and just vices and fears and things that have held me back. And I would say for me, it's always just stemmed down to like just having a very performative self-worth as an athlete, right? Since I was a little kid, right? Dad played collegiate baseball. I had to play collegiate baseball. Oh, you do good at a game, you get praised. And also my dad's incredible too. That was just my conditioning. And all of that stuff has trickled into the way that I view my work and the way that I live now, right? So going from corporate to something uncharted territory, the beautiful unknown of like building something that's uniquely your own, you're fundamentally playing a different game. Like you're not just going to be the first couple of years, you're not just, stacking all this cash and making investments in these things and being able to buy a house at a young age and all the stuff that my friends that are doing that are still on that corporate path, which is incredible. But what I've learned with myself is that my default is still to maybe blanket take a look at like my bank account and like want to like crack the whip on myself and be like, dude, I should have been so much further along. When objectively you as a friend would be like, dude, you're building a supplement company, you're building this podcast, you're building a marketing agency, you're playing a different game because you're a founder and you're trying to play for an asymmetric reward, and also you're chasing your calling. So you comparing yourself to this older version of yourself is so stupid, yet there's still so many moments. If I would be honest with you, if I would set up that alarm, there would probably be some shame in there. And what's helped me a lot is I started working with this great coach, guy I'd love to connect you to. His name's Chris Lieto. He was the runner-up in Ironman, the Kona World Championships in 2009. So like sub 9 hour Ironman. Wow. Incredible executive coach, and really bakes like Christianity and faith into it. I think you guys would. It would be like this. And so what he's been having me do, it's very similar. It's basically the same thing that you're saying. It's SLPPR. So whether I'm in person and I have an emotional reaction to something that someone says to me, or even when I'm staring at my computer and I start cracking the whip on myself, it's stop, listen, pause, pray, respond. In that alone, dude, I'm not perfect at all, and my subconscious will still take over. But to your point, just being in recognition of it and just starting to have this playbook and this process, and it might be 5 minutes a day, it might be one moment a day, but it's like, dude, that one moment is a massive step in the right direction. And then I look back to the time that I started with Chris, which was probably May or June, to now, and I think about these things very differently. And all that stuff is still in there, but I'm like, but I love the fact that I'm trending in the right direction.
I love that for you, and I've been through a similar arc where you're living on your edge, so it's going to be painful. It would be more painful if you weren't using your edge.
Yes.
And so as you're living on your edge, you're continually pushing the ceiling up, new levels, new devils. So you're gaining this greater level of awareness, and you're doing the SLLP, and that's going to be painful.
Yes.
There's going to be some times, I don't want to fucking do that. There's plenty of times when my reticular activating system alarm goes off, I'm like, snooze.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that right now. And part of it is like having forgiveness for yourself too. I think that high performers, it is a fascinating thing of what creates the mindset that is conducive to winning an Olympic gold medal or $1 billion company. What is that mindset? That mindset has a bunch of different flavors and a bunch of different routes, I believe. When you are on this journey and you're pushing your edge, it's interesting because I could be like, well, just accept yourself, bro. Just accept that you're not perfect. It's okay. I can also be like, well, accept that you can't accept. Accept that your need to accept yourself is an attachment in and of itself. So I'm attached to the need to let go of these bad things of me that are a part of me. Or I'm trying to truly detach. And when you're living as a material man in the world, that's really hard to accept, accept all the corners you cut your entire life, accept all the reasons that you sinned, or not reasons, but all of your sins, all of the times you lied to yourself. That's hard to accept.
Yes.
And so I do believe that there's a time and place for both, where sometimes I would relapse on porn and I'd be like, come on.
Yeah.
You're too powerful for this to matter. Let's keep it moving. We don't need to beat ourselves up. Come on. And then there's another time where I relapse and I'm like, dude, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
This is unacceptable. And go down that too. And I don't have an answer for you of whether fear and faith, whether those two things, when and where are they appropriate. I believe that for most people, we live in fear and we're beating ourselves up too much. So you want to swing to the side of faith. where you're like, I'm too powerful for that to
Yeah.
matter. I have faith in myself. It's all good. Keep it moving. When you get to the other side of faith, well, now I'm in this period in my life where I'm fusing faith and fear together in this yin yang of performance or whatever, because I have consolidated the hectic energy of fear and I'm in control to a greater degree.
Yeah.
So if anyone is in that fear-based mindset, I would say, fuck the fear, divine disinterest in your thoughts, focus only on faith. Start forgiving yourself, start accepting yourself, starting being kinder to yourself, self-love, and understanding that you are not your story, you're not your name, you're not your body, you are none of those things. There's plenty of Bretts, plenty of Nicks. You're not your story. Self-worth is made up. Nothing can contribute to or take away from your inherent value. And let's move the reticular activating system to, I believe in myself. I can do this. I accept myself. I love myself. I trust myself. I unconditionally love myself. Shift to there. See what happens. A lot of programs, a lot of scaffolding is going to fall away. A lot of fear is going to fall away because you and I are both of the mind that the mission takes care of everything.
Yes.
Anything that's not a constituent component of the mission will fall away, porn being one of them.
Yes.
And I know that that's true for me in my life, where
Yes.
I start just focusing on the mission, it all starts getting taken care of again. Instead of me focusing on stop doing this or stop doing that or the habits, just focus on the Polaris North Star mission. What are you really trying to do? Now, when you get that greater level of awareness, because you've shifted to faith and God, the fear is going to be glaringly obvious. It's going to be glaringly obvious when you jerk off to porn that, whoa, that was not in alignment. That was unconscious behavior. That was some dark energy shit that I did not have the strength to overcome, and that makes me feel weak. Let me sit in that shit. I think the present moment is only for the most courageous of men, and feeling the feelings is only for the most courageous of men, and it is the man that pretends that his feelings aren't hurt that is the weakest. So just be real with yourself too.
To your point about God too, I think something that's helped me a lot the last year in particular, our buddy Nick Smith, he had told me that Jesus, there's not a single piece of teaching that Jesus uses a single time in the Bible. Like he never uses fear or never uses shame a single time. So he was essentially like, if Christ never used shame as a teaching principle, why do you think that shaming yourself for making a mistake is the right answer? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, there's certain things that get said to you and it just like the lights just go on and it's so intuitive. And then you have this understanding, right? The more you build your relationship with God, you're like, he built us to be like beautifully imperfect, where it's like we can have this amazing conversation, talk about all these great topics, and still maybe like relapse on that vice every once in a while and whatever it is. God willing, I hope that doesn't happen, but just the nature of us being addicted to our flesh, and the flesh can essentially mean just anything in this material world. And I had a pastor that told me one time, he described the difference between what it's like to live on earth for the flesh versus heaven. And he was saying the result of our, like what we're asked to do on earth is basically like being asked to do a 2-week water fast, knowing that for the rest of your life, you could eat whatever you want, as much as you want, whenever you want, like this like endless, incredible buffet. And that's essentially the comparison to heaven. So like our time on earth is like this 2-week water fast, and you have just like this eternal just love and forgiveness that you can't even comprehend from your Savior. But then at the same time, it's like you also, I think you're called to do great things, and we're called to be great. I think that's something that I think a lot of people that, resonate with being high performers, they start building a relationship with Christ, and you're reading in the Bible, like you're being called to be a slave of everyone. And it's very natural to be like, well, can I be great? Like, is it bad to have ambition? Like, do these things still matter? And my answer to that would be no, those things absolutely do matter. Jesus wants you to be greater than anyone. God wants you to be greater than anyone, but it's about like your heart posture to those things. Like, do you need the house or the business to sell because you need it to really make you feel whole because you self-identify with it? Or do you want that house because you want to be able to provide for your beautiful wife and your children, and you want to sell the business because you can pass on and that money to your family and build a legacy, and also like enrich the lives of your employees that have been in the grind with you for 2. So that's always been really encouraging to me, where it's like, no, I can have both of these things and they're incredibly synergistic. These things, again, they're not mutually exclusive, but our natural inclination is to think that they are.
Yeah, I love everything you just said. And I realized that when I was in college, I wrote a book called Polaris, and Polaris is like your North Star. What's your mission? Write down all your goals, write down everything you want in life, blah, blah, blah. And I came up with a Polaris mission statement. And that mission statement ended up being a trap for me, because it was wrapped up with, I need to be this kind of person. I need to be basically an oil and gas tycoon. That was what I was doing before breathwork. And that was a trap, because then when God kind of shifted my reality up a little bit and was like, maybe this isn't your path, I had so much attachment to the identity I wanted to become. Not this sort of arrow of attention fixed on the godly virtues. So let the godly virtues be the things that I am pointed towards, that I intend to embody. And ambition is a godly virtue, in my opinion. Humility, love, empathy, joy, kindness, abundance of that house for your wife. But in my younger years, I was attached to, it's going to be this house, it's going to be this car, it's going to be this, so detailed granularly that it ended up being, if I don't achieve this exact thing, I'm a failure. And what you find so much freedom when you're just like, I'm just going to embody the godly virtues to the best of my abilities, to the nth degree. Let those be the guiding constellations of my life. Yeah.
It's almost what when you're saying this, I'm thinking to myself, entering, when you're entering 2025, goal setting, these tangible things, this conjecture, whatever, maybe there's a time and a place for that. I'm sure that there is, but you're making me realize, and I actually kind of intuitively felt this heading into this year, like, what if all you did as a young man was just like cultivate these virtues that you just spoke about? How much better would your life be?
We're so focused on the negative, focused on how we need to be better, and what you place your attention upon expands. So my whole life, I'm focused on, I need to be great, need to, have to, should have. Recently, I'm like, I'm just a fucking good guy. My dad was a good guy. Basically, his whole ethos, he just recently came to God, and he's 59.
Wow.
Wild conversation.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I got to meet your dad and your mom, which was so cool.
Yeah, so wild, so amazing. But his ethos, his entire life, is just be a good person, be good. Goodness is a godly virtue. Well, I'm a good person. I was like thinking about it. I'm like, I'm a good person, but I'm not ever really paying attention to me being a good person. I'm not. You see the good that you are, and you kind of shelve it, and then you just look down and you focus on all the shit.
Yes.
And what if you pointed your eyes upwards again to, like, I have been blessed in this life with this virtue. I am a good person. I truly believe that. And I believe that God gifted me that virtue. Let me focus on that more, and let me allow for that to expand and heat up. And goodness, it sounds like maybe not this super powerful virtue, or it's not like strength or power, but goodness. I'm like, actually, that just be a good person. That's a pretty solid one-liner.
Yes.
Ethos, mission statement.
Be a good person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So focusing on that more, I'm like, why am I a good person, and how can I become a better person? And from that place, not falling into the frame of the material world ever, not falling into that frame, but also, I spent all December making a vision board and writing out goals, and this is the car I'm going to have, and these are the houses I'm going to have, and this is the money I'm going to have, and goals. Great. The difference is, now that I'm 27 instead of 23, I'm not attached, and I'm not insisting on those goals. I'm intending. 3 superpowers of your consciousness: awareness, top level; attention, and then intention. So I'm now more aware as a 27-year-old. My attention is focused on the godly virtues. My intention is to also bring about this, and this in my life. I'm not going to insist on this car or this house or this money, but I intend to fucking get that. And like we were talking about off air, what you intend God might have a different plan.
Mm-hmm.
He might be like, you don't actually want that car, you want this car.
Yes.
Or you don't actually want to be a breathwork coach, you want to help 1 million people meditate at the same time throughout the entire world with your app. Oh, well, thank you, God, for that. That resonates more.
Interesting. So you sent me that vision board, which I read. So that you wrote that when you were 23.
No. That was December.
That was December.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And would you say when you wrote that in December, had you been hit with this thought of just focusing on being a good man and a good person? Or
Yeah, I send that vision board out to clients sometimes, and I realize that that's not encapsulating my actual mental state. That's me, instead of going from like just thinking, I'm like, don't think it, ink it, get it down. If I am a co-creator with free will who believes in God and am a servant to God and a conduit of God's love and power and wisdom and authenticity and goodness, that's the core heartstone. That is nuclear fusion center.
Yeah.
But because I'm a man of the material world, I believe I could have this car and these things. And why don't I leverage how my subconscious interprets things by images, the language of action, symbols, by just putting this all down on paper and looking at it every day and just programming myself. Because we are vessels of God, and the breath is the voice of the soul. We are also monkeys. We're also portable electronic devices with a bunch of programs running in our code. And so let me leverage all of them. Let me use instinct, which is monkey, fear, security,
Yes.
instinct, root. Let me use intellect up top with the vision board. Like, this is how I'm realistically going to get it. Logically left brain. And then let me fuse fear, instinct, intellect with my heart intuition. And that's sort of the progression I've been on. Is like first 23 years I'm down in fear. And then I come up, that fear always comes up into the brain and blah, 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 and I'm scheming still. Now it's like, just be here, present. Everything is coming back to presence. Peak performance is presence. Just be right here, be right now. Intend to do great things and make it abundantly clear to your subconscious mind that that is already real. That's already happened. Believe you have received it and it shall be given. So I'm operating in different worlds too, but I feel that with a lower level of awareness when I was 23, it was too much for me to have these grandiose goals. I become attached, and then I'm not good enough, and I'm living my life in fear. Fuck. So it's an arc.
It almost seems like you now, it's all the traits that you identified. It's now just like this almost like cocktail or like integration of all those things, and not having, there's a perfect time and a place for fear. I think some little bit of healthy fear, dude, it keeps you sharp. Anyone will say that. A lot of great people you talk to, if they're brutally honest, they'll be like, fear was a big motivator for me too. But we've both had those moments in our life where fear was that defining thing, and you just fall so hard on your face. Just like any of these other characteristics, it can't just be one of those things just fully driving the ship. Like, it is an integration of all those things together. Keeps you balanced.
Totally.
Right?
It absolutely is. It's that fusion and that balance. And high performers, I think that we have this program running where it's like, it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
It has to be hard. I'm now dabbling with more like, what if it was super easy? And since the vision board has happened, a lot of things have checked off the story that I was writing. And since January, a lot of things have just fallen into my lap, and it's been easy. And I'm kind of like coming from the school of power now, not force. Force is like, there has to be an us versus them kind of thing. Force is like sort of coming from a place of, you're not whole. Power is like, I am whole already, and I can become creator from this wholeness. And I just switched that mentality Jan 1, and 2 months later, it's like my life's completely changed. The Breathwork app is symbolic and representative of this because it's been the easiest thing I've done in a while. Both my brother and I were like, this feels divine because it's so easy. What if it was easy? What if it wasn't really hard?
Yes.
But my whole life, I'm like, I'm going to go do the hardest fucking sport I can. Because otherwise, it doesn't mean anything, or otherwise I'm not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's a dichotomy when you're wanting to do great things in this life, you're going to come up against those edges.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to alchemize the fear from lead to gold wherever you can.
Little mental and spiritual alchemy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you feel like the way that you're speaking, I felt that the new year, when I recount the 30, New Year's that I've experienced, I remember, like, basically from the time that I was like 18 years old onwards, just almost like these unrealistic goals and ambitions that I had. And I almost intuitively knew in my soul that, like, I wasn't going to achieve those things that I would say out loud necessarily, because they just felt so grandiose. And I felt like this was the first year, almost this, like, when people would ask me, like, hey, what are your New Year's resolutions or these goals? It was essentially, I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was the equivalency of just being a good man. Like, almost this, I didn't have anything grandiose to say. It was just this trust of, like, I think something spectacular is going to happen. And I actually feel like I have a process that's working, and I need to just, like, keep implementing. And for me, it's always the balance of doing the unsexy things that are very painful, and then also putting myself in a position where I can make those quantum leaps too. Like a blend of both of those things. Mm-hmm. And that was just kind of my mindset entering the year. Like, when I'm hearing you speak, I don't hear pressure or anything like super grandiose. I just see this incredibly confident man that, like, knows that you've built a body of work, and you're like, when you have a great body of work and you're out in the world, other people will recognize that, and these opportunities and these businesses, it comes to you just by being out in the world because of the work that you've done behind the scenes.
It's a really interesting rabbit hole what you're bringing up, because we love external validation. Of course. For me, a big intention right now is to release from Nick the ego of Nick and the story of Nick and the body of Nick, because I will become my inherently limited self in that way. If I release and speak on this podcast, not from a Nick place, but from a God place, from a connection place, then I am more powerful, more inspiring, and I know that. And I know that when I'm on calls with people, if Nick is getting in the way, I contort myself and become limited. And so that's something that we all contend with, because, for example, like, I'm trying to release from Nick. My whole personal brand online is Nick. Mm-hmm. And that's what everyone is going to associate you with. And so truly, like, shedding the layers and just connecting to God to the deepest level that you possibly can, I believe is that really powerful thing. And there's so much that I could go into beyond that. But what I will say is, you're pointing to another theme that's been in this podcast of conviction being the elixir of manifestation.
Conviction is the elixir of manifestation.
Conviction, confidence. Confidence is the elixir of manifestation. Confidence comes from the evidence we have, from the body of work. So we leverage that body of work for sure, because that gives you that, like, oh yeah, I can do this. I've continually gone full court press in my life, and look at what I've been able to do now, and why can't I do that? And it feels like I kind of reached 2025 and was able to pump the brakes and be like, you don't have to let it come to you. Just let it come to you. Have faith, because you have confidence. And I think that what we're all trying to do is build that confidence up. And we can do that through, let's say retention is an edge for a listener. You retain for 3 weeks. Okay. 4 weeks the next time, and then 5 weeks, and then you just keep doing that. It's like those are just powerful, powerful wins that increases your conviction to the point where you could have faith that I won't ever watch porn again for the rest of my life. And that's a promise I made to myself literally this fucking morning meditating. And I'm in a place where I'm like, I have conviction in this. For the first time in my life, I was like, what if I actually just said that out loud and spoke to God this morning meditating? What if I actually just made that decision instead of like waiting to gain this evidence? Let me make that leap. And that was we'll see.
Yes.
I'm very convicted though. And when I was younger, I made these big grandiose goals too, but I wasn't convicted. I wasn't confident enough. So I self-sabotaged. So something I've done, which you didn't see, but I sent you my vision board. Initially, the vision board had goals that were more grandiose. And as January went through, I was like, if I don't lower this goal, I have to increase my conviction. And I'm going full tilt, full gas already. So I actually need to get a little more realistic to maintain my conviction and confidence. So let me really reduce it so that I don't stretch myself too far, project myself too far, and then start to sabotage myself because, again, that gap widens. Let me bring the cap closer to me this way. Oh, yeah, I can do that. Let's keep it moving. It's like the brain works on a 90-day goal is the best goal for the human brain.
90-day goal is the best goal for the human brain.
Yes, which is why I use the quarters. Because if it's longer than 90 days, then you're going to put it off. You're like, I can do that later. If it's shorter, then you don't think you have enough time and you end up imploding. So confidence, conviction, faith, fusing all of those things together and also making it not about you, but about what God has given you and the gifts you can give to the world. Selfless service above all. And that gives you that conviction too.
Yes.
That gives you that fucking confidence too. That is confidence. Releasing from like, I'm not this inherently limited Brett or Nick. Nick might not be able to do this, but what about me connected to God? The me that's me. You know you like no one else knows you. No one knows you like you know you. And you are not your story, name, or body. You are something much greater and much deeper than that. And you've known that and felt that since you were born, since you were conscious. So it's like we all feel this greatness within ourselves, and then we put ourselves in this box of Nick. And then we have to expand beyond that box of Nick when in reality you have infinite space. You are infinite already, and living and swimming, serving in the field of pure potentiality always. Fuck Nick.
Yeah.
And I ask myself at the end of every day, what percentage was I living in Nick versus truly connected to God, source, just a pinpoint of consciousness connected. A lot of days it's like, man, that was an 80% day. I had some good moments on calls, but that was an 80% day.
Yeah.
Don't love that. That's my edge right now.
But 80% is still pretty damn good, man, versus, 40% or whatever.
Well, what's beautiful is flow state, because that's when you're like, oh, it's not about me anymore.
Yes.
And you're not sure of what the next word is that you're going to say. You're actually present. You're connected, like, whether you want to call it, like the spiritual people call it channeling. I'm just in flow state.
Yeah.
It's not me talking anymore. It's not Nick talking.
What's helped me, my version of that, for I would say my equivalency of flow state, or maybe the byproduct of flow state, like how I approach my days, is it's just the feeling of when your head hits it's just the feeling that I get when my head hits the pillow, and just being like, what would make today an incredible day? It's always very basic things. Did I get a good night's sleep? Did I do the things that I was going to say I was going to do? Did I work diligently for X number of hours? Did I eat clean foods? Was I true with my word? Like, did I fudge the truth at all to people? X number of variables. And when my head hits the pillow and I feel like I really lived up to that image of myself that would constitute a really good day, dude, I don't worry about anything. I just have such presence. I don't worry about stresses of business or money in the bank account or logistics or all these things. Like I literally just it's so just like tunnel vision, being process oriented and proud of yourself as well too. And for me, it's always just when I'm straying away from the things that I know I should be doing, that's when I start worrying about all of these other variables, man.
Yeah, we all feel that. We all do that. And again, time and place to like, am I going to 6R out of these? Or am I going to get really fucking real with myself and recognize that I'm not in alignment?
Yes.
But when you are in alignment, we love that. That's like some sacred momentum right there. That's when you are dreaming a dream that's dreaming you. That's when God is taking the wheel. You're there. And you are calibrated to your potential.
Yes.
Your idea, self-image of yourself is calibrated to the external, which is like you talking about looking at your bank account and being like, this has been 3 years or whatever you thought, you know. You can look at your bank account and be like, I take full responsibility and I see this as a reflection of my frequency and my discipline and my devotion to God. Okay, that's empowering.
Yeah.
I also can look at my bank account and see this as, this shit has not caught up yet.
Yes.
And that's the sacred momentum.
Yes.
It's like, you know, you're doing the right things at the right time in the right way, and you're not cutting corners. And that is what makes you believe in yourself. Work ethic makes you believe in yourself, because beliefs are decisions that you make every fucking day.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, we've honestly we don't talk about this enough. Like even in the esoteric space, like there is a legitimate spiritual war that is going on between God and Satan, and it's constantly around us 24/7, whether you realize it or not. And I firmly believe like Satan wants you to shame yourself when you look at your bank account, or tell yourself all these things that you're doing wrong, versus like turning towards that godly path of like, Lord, thank you just for like the opportunity to actually persevere and get stronger. Oh, this money is actually because I've thrown a bunch of money into a business. Like, thank you for giving me the opportunity to like, you know, pursue my passion, monetize it, and have a potentially like incredible outcome too. Just being able to like lean into the gifts that he's given you, versus Satan really wants to just like shame you and think super practically and compare yourself to the version of yourself 5 years ago, even though those goals aren't ideologically aligned with your spirit anymore too. And like, I don't know, for me, like, or pornography or whatever, like recognizing that it's a spiritual warfare, and me like turning towards those temptations or that negative thinking or that old way of thinking, it's ultimately me losing the battle. And dude, we were built by God to win.
And when you're winning and you're doing everything that you said you're going to do, you know, Satan makes good use of idle hands. Well, your hands are not idle.
Yeah.
For one.
We're doing something.
Yeah. You're doing something. Mission takes care of everything. And when that delusional period happens, let's say right before you're going to relapse, there's a frequency to the thinking all of a sudden. There's a substance that like enters you, and it's like Satan gets that like foot in the door, and then it's like whoosh, and it manifests in the body, and you're like, oh my God, I'm delusional, I'm not thinking. It ultimately becomes unconscious behavior. You dim your light. But when you are doing the right things, you are aligned with God, you are like, oh, like resonating.
Definitely.
And that's what makes life worth living. That is how I live for that feeling.
Yeah.
It feels like my body literally feels like pleasurable, like 20% orgasm happening when I'm in connection with God and resonating and doing the right things, even if it's hard, especially when it's hard. And 99% of your problems can probably be solved with massive, massive action. So I love the idea of like, yeah, there's a cat, you know, if you're a mouse, it's like, yeah, there's the cat. There's also the cheese in front of you, impulses of spirit, faith and fear, leaning into that faith, because Satan loves to live in the vague, the ambiguous, and the fear.
Yes.
And get his foot in the door. You're not good enough. And he just kind of death by 1,000 cuts until 3:30 comes around and you're like, fuck it.
Yeah.
Load it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Load it up. Man, I even just, you know, just this friendship, as we're speaking, I'm just thinking about, you know, we're talking about these quantum leaps and this progress that can happen, because, you know, we're talking about very practical things, also, you know, very like heady, esoteric things too. You know, I could totally see a listener being like, yeah, this is great, but like, you know, what's the application? And I think the cool thing about our community in Austin is like you and your brother Jack. You guys are good examples of just friends, like building these really deep friendships and watching like your brothers build and make these quantum leaps and these iterations over time. Or like I remember the three of us linking up in person at Juice Land, and you guys are just figuring this thing out, and you had great energy. And from my perspective, it was so clear that you guys were meant to do amazing things, and it was just, you know, just iterating and iterating and iterating and landing on the thing, which has ultimately led to this breathwork app too. Like that can, I don't know, man, I think that's a like kind of a perfect segue to like conclude this conversation. Is I'd love for our listener just for you to tell them about, you know, what it was like building this thing and just more about the app. But I think I don't know, man, I just think having friendships where you're building together and seeing them when you met versus where they are now and where we're going to be 20 years down the road, it's just a cool thing to go on that journey together, and people are craving that.
I love it, and I've loved seeing your journey. Everyone here in Austin, I mean, I'm wearing Nolan Wilson's Rough Rider shirt, and I got to see the whole Tyro Glass thing, and I'm like, wow, man, I texted him, I'm like, dude, I'm so fucking proud of you. Like, this is so amazing. This is the best shirt I've ever owned.
Yes.
Dude. And, you know, for my story with my brother, it was, we were pretty broke, sleeping on the floor for 2 years. We just got bed frames and just got like a full fridge. And to be in that trench with my brother was a beautiful thing. And I think a lot of people, I'm so grateful for that. So blessed for that. And it was really just like churning and burning different experiments. And I think that ultimately this entrepreneurship thing comes down to like who's experimenting and iterating the fastest and adapting the fastest, because you can't live 1,000 lifetimes. You can't be the smartest person in the room every time. But from your lived experience, like healing myself, it's like, wow, okay, I know that now. From a lived experience, no one can take that away from me. And so I was working in oil and gas, and he was ghostwriting and building apps, and it was kind of this arc of like, I needed to get to the place, you know, in July I quit my job where I meet Jack where he's at. Finally, we had to go on our own separate journeys, kind of if he's building these apps and he's ghostwriting and he's doing these different jobs. I'm turning wrenches on oil sites and shit posting on Twitter. And then when I committed to myself in a greater level and stepped in to a different power and really like gave it up to God and started listening to God and including God in everything in my life, I was just able to intuitively know, yep, quitting my job. Oh, hiring this guy, not that guy. Oh, running this ad, saying this on this ad, saying this on this Instagram reel or whatever. The intuition also came from like silence and stillness and boredom and just really listening and really meditating, praying, breathwork. Breathwork gave me that sort of pull to take the arc over the past 6 months and just go all in on coaching and help people and heal people. And my brother's own journey led us to, in December, we're like met exactly where we were at. And it was a beautiful thing because he was ready to do something. I was in need of something to help me scale.
Yes.
And it was like, this is divine.
Yes.
This is divine. Send it. Let's send it. And there was no doubt, there was no inkling of sort of like, do we do this? Do we do that? It's been coherence. It's just been like seamless. I've never had a venture like feel that way in my life. And so,
and it's with your brother, right? The person that you've known, the guy that's always just been right there. It's so funny how like a lot of times the right answer is almost hitting you in the, like sometimes God's trying to hit you in the face with the right answer and you can't see it, but also you guys had to go on this journey to converge back there. But it's also really cool because you guys are so complementary where you're hysterical, but you can also be very serious and dialed in and tapped into performance. And Jack is just like, Jack could be, so many people have told him he needs to go into stand-up comedy because, dude, he will have you cracking up. Like, I remember the first time he met Solbra, he walks in with this, like, big bag of P. Terry's and just, like, he's just so authentic. And he's also, like, a great writer, and he's got this, you know, he's technical. He's almost like a polymath where he's good at all these different things. And you guys, I see why this is such a special thing. Because you guys are just blending your skill set together as brothers and building something that the world ultimately needs.
Yeah, well, thank you. And it feels feels resonant. The North Star is let's get 1 million people meditating at the
Yes.
same time throughout the entire world. And later in life, let's get 1 billion people doing breath work at the same time. I mean, that would be powerful. And billions will breathe is the
Billions will
slogan.
breathe.
And for us to both in our own ways make a declaration to God of this is what I want and this is the direction I'm going in. I'm no longer going to be ghostwriting and doing these different things, and I'm no longer going to be dabbling in oil and gas and doing these other. It's like, I'm doing this, you're doing that. Boom. Come back together, and here we are. And so it's been a beautiful journey, and I'm so grateful and blessed, and it really feels like a dream is dreaming me many days. And so I appreciate it so much, and I appreciate your incredible heart-centered support throughout the entire time, because every interaction I have with you fills me with life and vigor and vitality and belief in myself. And there's been many times where I've texted you, and the outpouring of love and support and just kind words has been living in my nervous system and ringing in my nervous system. And so I'm so grateful for you, to call you a friend, call you a brother, and to be on this mission together in so many ways.
Man, I appreciate you saying that, brother. That's really what life is about. Like, you have no idea the way that your words can just impact a single person. Giving someone one compliment, one seed of belief or whatever, it could, I think men in particular are like dying to just hear one other person notice something about them or just showcase their belief in them too. I think we have an obligation to do that with people. Like, if you see something it's special, man, like that's a spiritual gift of like, encouragement, and your words are so powerful. So that's why I always just try and force myself, like, hey, if I recognize this thing about Nick, I'm actually kind of, and I think it could help him, why I should be telling him that too. Like, what if that really helps push him in the right direction? And it's, you do that to so many different people, brother. And yeah, just believe in you and your brother so much. For our audience, what's the best way for people to connect with you, get the app, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so the app is Coherence on the App Store on iOS. It's going to be on Android here soon. And then I'm at Based Ethos on X and Instagram and YouTube. BASEDETHOS. And you can DM me on either platform. I'll get to you when I can get to you. And yeah, I really appreciate this. This has been the most incredible podcast I've been on. So I'm mega grateful for you.
Appreciate it, brother. Let's keep building, man. Excited.